Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. You are listening to the Daly Dose Sports Podcast, and I am your host, Clint Daly, coming to you from the Mile High City here in Denver, Colorado, and we are back for another week of talking sports with a dose of common sense. And yes, I did say 2025 last week, and I did hear from a number of listeners on my air, and I would like to apologize. It is now my New Year's resolution to not say 2025 ever again. But I would also like to point out that your boy went 5 of 6 on my NFL picks and 2 of 2 on my college football picks. Hey, but that's all right. That's all right. Hey, happy Wednesday to you. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope your week is going well and that you did enjoy those college football playoff games as well as those NFL football games. I hope you, your family, your friends are all staying strong and you're all staying healthy right now. And like I said, we are in a wild time of the year. The college football playoff is now down to the championship game. And those NFL playoffs, wow, they started with a bang. First, though, let's jump into that college football playoff. In the Fiesta Bowl, we had a phenomenal game as the Miami Hurricanes tried to botch the game with a few silly mistakes, but in the end, they managed to rally. They held on and beat the Ole Miss Rebels, and Miami now makes it back to the national championship game for the first time since 2001. Hey, remember that Miami was somewhat of a controversial pick for that playoff. They did have 2 bad losses on their schedule, but they got in at the number 10 seed, and since making it, they have now beaten number 7 Texas A&M, number 2 Ohio State, and now number 6 Ole Miss. You know, that game against Ole Miss, it really felt like Miami was dominating. I mean, they outgained Ole Miss 459 to 398, but they did have 1 turnover, and they committed 10 penalties for 74 yards, and a lot of them were silly penalties. Miami quarterback Carson Beck threw for 268 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. At times he looked good. At times he kind of scared me. And Canes running back Mark Fletcher ran for 133 yards and a touchdown. Miami scores a touchdown with just 18 seconds left to take a 31-27 lead, and the Rebels' last-second drive came up a little short. Now, should there have been a penalty called on the final play when Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Shambles threw a ball to the end zone? I mean, there was some hand fighting. Maybe like a illegal contact call. I don't know. I guess you could have called it. I'm not sure I would have in that situation. And the refs didn't. The Miami Hurricanes move on. Then over in the Peach Bowl, we got a rematch of what had been a pretty tight game back in October, as the Indiana Hoosiers had to score 10 fourth quarter points to beat the Oregon Ducks 30-20 back in October. Now we get that rematch. Now the Oregon Ducks get a chance to get some revenge. But remember, that game in October, it was played in Autzen Stadium up in Eugene, Oregon. Also remember, the Indiana head coach, Curt Cignetti, he now has his Hoosiers team playing with like the precision of a surgeon. The Hoosiers jumped on the Ducks 42-7 before Oregon even knew what hit him. But here's what's crazy. If I had told you the Indiana quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, only threw for 177 yards, and that Hoosiers running back, Kalen Black, only rushed for 63 yards, you might think Oregon was in a dogfight of a game. They were not. Oregon committed 3 turnovers. Indiana just rarely makes mistakes, and the Hoosiers take Oregon to the woodshed 56-22 in a game that honestly didn't even feel that close. Okay, so now next Monday night in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, the Indiana Hoosiers will face those Miami Hurricanes in what will basically be a home game for Miami. Mario Cristobal versus Curt Cignetti. Carson Beck versus Fernando Mendoza. And again, if I had told you that the Indiana Hoosiers were going to be playing for a national championship, we would have all said the same thing. Well, what time is tip-off? Hey, Indiana has consistently been one of the worst football programs in the nation for decades. The Hoosiers have not had back-to-back winning seasons like they have this year since the early 90s under a head coach named Bill Mallory, a quarterback named Trent Green, and a running back named Von Dunbar. You might remember a few of those names. Indiana versus Miami? I mean, can the Hoosiers really hang with the U? Here is one word of caution. The Canes are winning games at the line of scrimmage. Hey, they pushed around A&M. They pushed around Ohio State. They pushed around Ole Miss on both sides of the ball. Carson Beck, it's not always pretty, but he's scrappy. Running back Mark Fletcher, he is able to grind out difficult yards behind that offensive line, and Malachi Toney is a dangerous playmaker that can change the game on literally any play. Miami will be playing basically a home game. It's not in their home stadium, but it's basically a home game for them. So why in the world is Indiana the team that is being favored by Vegas to the tune of 7.5 points? Well, because the Indiana Hoosiers are just a machine. They don't make mistakes. What was that quote from Top Gun?
That's him, Iceman. That's the way he flies, ice cold, no mistakes. Just wears you down. You get bored, frustrated, do something stupid, and he's got you.
Yes, that. The Hoosiers just don't give you any breaks. They don't make mistakes. You're going to have to beat them. They go out, they execute, and they expect to whoop your behind from the beginning, and then they do it. Now, I can totally see a path for Miami to stay in this game and keep this close. But that path involves Miami not making any mistakes. And I'm not sure they can play that way. They rarely play mistake-free football. I am going to say Indiana 34, Miami 17. And we're going to see if Miami can keep it that close, because I just don't see anyone stopping Indiana. They have been dominant. Hey, today on the Dose, the NFL playoffs opened up, like I said, with an absolute bang, as nearly every game came down to the final possession. And then our Daly Dose Top 5 is going to make a return today. We haven't had a Top 5 in a few weeks. It will be NFL playoff flavored, but first we have a little bit of news to get to. And let's stay in college football, where we have a few signings. Lane Kiffin has his new quarterback, as Arizona State's Sam Leavitt is now headed to LSU to play for Lane. That wasn't it. Nebraska transfer quarterback Dylan Raiola has committed to Oregon, which is weird, because I expected him to go to Texas Tech, because that's where Patrick Mahomes went, and he seems to just want to clone Patrick Mahomes. Is that a good fit? Seems like a weird fit. I don't know if I see Raiola as an Oregon guy. Cincinnati's Brendan Sorsby is headed to Texas Tech instead. TCU's Josh Hoover is going to Indiana to apparently take over for Fernando Mendoza. Iowa State's Rocco Beck is going to Penn State, and Florida's DJ Lagway is going down to Baylor. Now, is all this transferring really what's best for the kids? Is all this transferring really what's best for the sport? Can we cap these transfers a little bit? Do you need to go to 4 schools in 4 years? How is this helpful? Because here's the problem, and here's what people don't want to talk about. You make relationships in college. When you bounce around and show no loyalty, you don't make those relationships. Those relationships are how you get jobs later in life. It might not be as good for kids as we think it is. Here's the problem. Who's going to cap it? The NCAA. They don't have any power whatsoever. So I don't know how this is going to get fixed. It feels like college football is waiting for Congress to fix it. Yeah, because Congress is capable of fixing anything. Let's move over to the NFL. It took a little while, but it turns out the NFL was not done firing head coaches or having coach movement. After losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 18, the Baltimore Ravens fired 18-year head coach John Harbaugh. And that domino may have started a very interesting chain in the league, because then the Miami Dolphins decided to fire head coach Mike McDaniel, who had gone in just a few years from looking like a dodgeball target to like a drug lord kingpin, which is kind of weird. But here's what's interesting. I think McDaniel will end up being an offensive coordinator, and that will be a much better fit for him. But where does Harbaugh go? Because I noticed that John Harbaugh waited until this week to do any interviews. You think that's a coincidence? Think again. He was waiting to see which teams lost in the wild card round, and then maybe he could land a little bit better of a job. But here's my word of caution for fans of, say, the Miami Dolphins the New York Giants, the Atlanta Falcons. You are looking at John Harbaugh as the guy that is going to come in and get you over the hump to be a perennial winner. Please keep in mind, though, Harbaugh has had a 2-time MVP on his roster, and he can't get that team to the playoffs. So I'm not sure John Harbaugh is the guy everyone is thinking he is. Because from what I can tell, he needs to inherit like an all-time defense, and then he's going to be good. Do you have that? If not, good luck. But we weren't done, because then on Monday, after that Monday night debacle, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin announced that he had enough and he would be stepping down after 19 seasons. And now, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be looking for just their 4th coach since 1969. So now, we have 3 of the 4 teams in the AFC North that need new head coaches. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals, they do too. They just won't admit it. Wouldn't it be funny if they all just changed? Like Harbaugh to Pittsburgh, Stefanski to Baltimore, and then Tomlin to Cleveland? I don't know. It just seems like they could just play musical chairs. One final story to get to. Allegations against Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice came out last week with claims that the third-year NFL player physically abused his ex-girlfriend over an 8-year period. Now, Rice's ex-girlfriend, Dakota Nicole, shared a number of photos on Instagram showing extensive damage to their residence, along with images of herself showing bruises and gashes on her face and body. Nicole alleges the injuries were caused by Rashee Rice, with whom she shares 2 children. Now, we will see if Rice can get all this figured out before the season. But hey, the Chiefs are going to have some very real offseason concerns. How long is Patrick Mahomes out? We're not sure. Is Travis Kelce coming back? We're not sure. And can Rashee Rice get this legal stuff taken care of? Hey, I don't know what happened there. And I will be the first to say Rice is innocent until proven guilty. But this girl does have some damage to her face. Then again, maybe this is just me, but how do we know that it wasn't like he beat her up? Maybe she was just a passenger in the car with him. So those NFL playoffs kicked off on Saturday, and wow, did we get a wild weekend of football. 4 of the 6 games were one-possession games. 1 was a one-possession game until the very, very end. And then that Monday night game, well, it was close, but mostly terrible until the very end. But hey, it was a wild, crazy wild card weekend in the NFL. And right now, we are going to name a few winners and a few losers from the opening weekend of the NFL postseason. Let's hand out our first winner. And I'm going to give that to the NFL. Hey, I know that league gets a ton of things wrong all the time. But wow, are they killing the parity thing. Nearly every single game this weekend went down to the wire. We had comebacks. We had final possession scores. We had great performances. We had last-second finishes. The first 4 games of the weekend were decided by a total of 14 points. Hey, it was a wildly entertaining weekend in the NFL. But I'm going to give out a loser. And I'm going to give that to NFL fans. Because remember when you just turned on the TV and you just watched the NFL? Yeah, those days are over. Now you have to have some local channels. You also might need Amazon Prime or Netflix or NFL Network. Is this really the plan? I have to get every single streaming service, or I might miss a playoff game? I mean, are we going to have like Paramount Plus hosting a Super Bowl at some point? Will I have to change to a different provider at the start of every quarter? I don't know. This seems like a bad business plan. And I don't like it. And I know the NFL controls every single aspect of their product. They need to make their league more accessible, or eventually they will lose a ton of fans in the long term. I know right now they're like, oh no, everything's fine. Okay. But I'm telling you, there will be people that'll just go, you know what, I'm sick of it. I can't have every single service. I'll do something else. Be careful, NFL. I'm going to give a winner, and I'm going to give it to Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Well, sort of. Josh Allen took a physical beating on Sunday in the Bills' win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Allen had to be evaluated twice for a concussion. he had to have his hand checked after banging it on a teammate's helmet, and he got his knee rolled up. But hey, Josh threw for 273 yards and led the Bills to a come-from-behind victory on the road. That is the Bills' first postseason road win since they beat the Miami Dolphins back in '92. But hey, Josh Allen looked every bit like an MVP on Sunday. But he did get beat up. Oh, and also, he lost wide receiver Gabe Davis and safety Jordan Poyer. And it sounds like Davis will be long-term. So Allen was definitely a winner on Sunday. But it also was costly. I'm going to hand out a loser. And that is going to go to offensive football in that final game of the weekend, the Monday night game between the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hey, if you ever wondered what football probably looked like back in the days of like the leather helmet, yeah, that was probably it. It wasn't very good. The two teams combined for a total of 583 yards, which sounds great. But most of those came from Houston in garbage time. The Steelers had a total of 175 yards. The Texans had just 250 yards going into the fourth quarter. Hey, if that was the final game for Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, what a rough way to end your career. Rodgers finished the game 17-33. He had 146 yards and an interception. He also had a fumble return for a touchdown. Hey, don't get me wrong. Both Pittsburgh and especially Houston have really good defenses. And also that was really bad offense. I saw longer drives in Minneapolis last week.
Oh, no, you didn't.
I'm going to give a winner to the city of Chicago. Hey, the Windy City doesn't have much to cheer about. The Bulls aren't great. The Blackhawks are average. You have to shovel bullet casings out of your driveway every Monday after all the shootings. But on Saturday, the Chicago Bears came back from a 21-3 deficit against those hated Green Bay Packers and got their first playoff win since 2010 when Jay Cutler led them to a win over Seattle.
The only time a man is allowed to think about another man is when that man is Jay Cutler.
I don't know who Jay Cutler is.
Why are you saying Cutler like that?
Hey, these Bears are not conventional. At times they look like a mess, but then they will pull out a victory and Caleb Williams will just be like,
"This is me, this is who I am. Call me Broadway Joe, because that's how I do it, the Broadway."
So congrats to the city of Chicago. Next up is the Los Angeles Rams. Hey, you are only one game away from the NFC Championship game. Also, make sure you're wearing a vest if you go out in public. I'm going to give a loser, though. And I hate to do it, but I'm going to give it to the Los Angeles Chargers offensive line. And I know, they're banged up. That offensive line has some guys starting that I know they wish they didn't have to play, but my goodness. And I know that game against the New England Patriots ended 16-3, but that was a field goal game until the very end. But they just couldn't protect quarterback Justin Herbert. Herbert was sacked 6 times. He was hit 11 times. And they say he was rushed on 31 of 32 plays. And I thought there were a few moments that he actually might, die. Yes, I realize that Herbert is going to get criticism, that he can't beat good teams, he can't win playoff games, and maybe that's true, but that wasn't on him on Sunday. He got crushed. In fact, the Chargers ended up firing their offensive coordinator and offensive line coach after that debacle. That was bad. I'm going to give a winner, and I'm going to give it to a division because the NFC West division is killing it so far in the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks are the number 1 team. They enjoyed a bye week. They will now face their division rival, the San Francisco 49ers, in that divisional round. And the Niners got there by beating the defending champion Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. And then the Los Angeles Rams outlasted the Carolina Panthers on Saturday. So of the 4 teams left in the NFC, 3 of them are from the NFC West. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I'm going to give another loser, though, and I hate to do this, but I have to give a loser to the San Francisco 49ers medical staff. What in the world is going on with the Niners? Is there something in the water? Or, as some guy on the internet posted last week, is there an electromagnetic field around their practice facility? I don't know. But the Niners suffered yet another injury on Sunday as tight end George Kittle blew his Achilles. He's done for the foreseeable future. But I mean, the number of injuries that the Niners have had over the past few seasons, it's incredible. Fred Warner, Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Bryce Huff. I mean, the job that Kyle Shanahan and his staff are doing is nothing short of amazing. Who would have thought that Christian McCaffrey would be the healthiest guy on this team? It's unreal. I'm going to give a winner, and I'm going to give it to former Houston Texans pass rusher J.J. Watt. Now, if you didn't see, J.J. appeared on the Eli and Peyton Manning broadcast on Monday night during that Steelers-Texans game. Okay, so why in the world is J.J. a winner? I mean, he doesn't even play anymore. Well, for one, he couldn't lose that night. Either his brother TJ with the Steelers moves on, or his former team moves on. Either way, he's a winner. Also, he was absolutely phenomenal on the show. He more than held his own with the Mannings. He was funny. He was intelligent. He understands the game. Hey, little advice, make J.J. Watt a regular guest. He was great. But I'm going to hand out our final loser, and I'm sorry. I'll say that in advance, but it has to go to Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown. All season, Brown has been complaining about his lack of touches. He wants the ball. Hey, I understand, but know thyself, because you don't have the type of team nor the type of quarterback that should be throwing the ball all over the place. On Sunday, Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts threw the ball 35 times. Yeah, that's about 30 times too many. Okay, but A.J. Brown, this is what you wanted, right? But then Brown finished the game with 3 catches for 25 yards and 3 big, crucial drops. Then he blows up, and he and his head coach, Nick Sirianni, get into it on the sideline and have to be separated. Now there is talk that the Eagles could cut A.J. Brown. But it's not that easy. You see, he would cost about $72 million in dead cap if they cut him. So you may be thinking, would I cut A.J. Brown? I mean, after derailing our team chemistry and our chance for a repeat Super Bowl title, yeah, not only would I cut him, I would bring him back on a 10-day deal, pull his hair, and cut him again. Hey, remember that you should be stopping by DailyDoseSports.com each and every week to see what new things we have going on over there. We have links to podcasts, we have links to videos, and we have links to new articles every week. In fact, if you missed it this week, I posted an article on the keys to my Denver Broncos beating the Buffalo Bills in that playoff game. So make sure you stop by and check that out. Also, remember, you can email the podcast at DailyDoseSports@gmail.com. And like I said, I did hear from a number of listeners pointing out that I said 2025 last week. But it's always good to hear from you. So feel free to reach out. And remember, if you need some Daily Dose gear, we've got t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, baseball caps. You can find it all over at DailyDoseSports.com. Now, as we do so many weeks here at the Daily Dose, we need to get over to our Daily Dose Top 5. So we are now down to just 8 teams remaining in the NFL playoffs. Of those 8 coaches remaining, there are only 2 coaches that have already won a Super Bowl. The Denver Broncos' Sean Payton and the Los Angeles Rams' Sean McVay are the only current coaches remaining in the postseason this year that have already checked that box. But hey, it's not easy. You got to stay healthy. You have to have some really great players, and you have to have just a little bit of luck. Well, today, we're going to look at 5 head coaches that are undoubtedly very good at their job. They had good players, but they just didn't have that little bit of luck to put them over the top and get a Super Bowl win. Today, our Daily Dose Top 5 is counting down the NFL coaches that have had the most wins in history, but never won a Super Bowl. Let's jump in. We start off at number 5. With a guy that stayed in his part of the country for his entire career. Born and raised in Wisconsin, Harry Peter Grant went to the University of Minnesota. He actually played briefly in the NBA for the Minneapolis Lakers, and he played some professional football in the NFL as well as Canada. But then, Bud Grant eventually spent 18 years as the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, where he won 158 games. He went to the Super Bowl 4 times, but he never won a Super Bowl. The Vikings made the playoffs a dozen times during Grant's tenure, which included a 6-year streak beginning in 1973. But you might remember they lost the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, first to the Dolphins and then to the Steelers. And then they came up short to the Raiders in Super Bowl 11. But back in 1969, Bud Grant technically led the Vikings to an NFL title. Sort of. Because you remember, it was still called the NFL, not the NFC. They won the NFL. Then they played the AFL champion Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 4, and they were beaten 16-7. But hey, Bud Grant was pretty good. He won 62% of the games that he coached. He was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1994. He went to 4 Super Bowls. He won 158 games, but he never won it all. And Bud Grant comes in today at number 5. We move on to number 4. And we get to a guy that did not have that winning percentage like Bud Grant. Because Jeff Fisher is primarily known for being a very, very average coach in NFL history. Every team he coached finished right around 500, and he coached for 22 years. When he was the coach of the Houston Oilers / Tennessee Titans, he went 8-8 5 times. He finished his career 173, 165, and 1. Yeah, that's right at 51%. But Fisher actually won a Super Bowl as a cornerback for the Chicago Bears back in '85, but he only made it to the playoffs as a coach 6 times in his 22-year career. His first was back in 1999 when his Tennessee Titans went all the way to Super Bowl 34, but lost in brutal fashion to the St. Louis Rams. He led the Titans to the AFC Championship a few years later before ultimately finishing with a 5-6 record in the playoffs. But Jeff Fisher won 173 games in his coaching career, and that ranks him today on our list at number 4. We arrive at number 3, and we get to a guy that had some really tough teams, but he also coached some franchises that at the time didn't always have the greatest of players. Because Chuck Knox started and ended his coaching career with the Los Angeles Rams. And in between his start and his end, he actually also coached the Buffalo Bills and a brand new franchise named the Seattle Seahawks. Now, his first run in Los Angeles began in '73. It lasted 5 years. The Rams made the playoffs every year. They even went to the NFC Championship game 3 years in a row. However, they never made it to the Super Bowl. And then when Knox went on to Buffalo and Seattle, he came up short those 6 times that he got them to the playoffs as well. The Rams never got back to the playoffs when he returned. He finished with a 7-11 record in the playoffs. Overall, Chuck Knox coached in the NFL 22 seasons. He won 56% of his games. Not bad, but he never even made it to a Super Bowl, let alone won it. But with 186 wins in his NFL career, Chuck Knox comes in today at number 3. We reach number 2 on our list of NFL coaches who won the most games but never won a Super Bowl. And we get to a guy that coached the most games without winning a Super Bowl, although he did win one as a player and as an assistant coach. Dan Reeves patrolled the sideline for a grand total of 357 NFL games in the regular season. He won 190 of those games. That's a 54% winning record. But Reeves had been a player for Tom Landry, and eventually he would be an assistant on Landry's staff in Dallas before going on to be a very successful coach in his own right. He won a ton of games. The bulk of those games were here with the Denver Broncos, who made the playoffs 6 times in 12 years from 81 until 92. You might remember the Broncos made it to Super Bowl 21 and 22. They lost both of those. They missed the playoffs the following year. And then they went back to Super Bowl 24 and got the worst beating by the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl history. But Reeves wasn't done. He'd get one more chance as the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, but he faced his former Denver Bronco team, and John Elway and the Denver Broncos gave him another L. Dan Reeves was a good coach, but he's never earned a spot in the Hall of Fame. And you'd think that a guy who went 11-9 in the playoffs and went to 4 Super Bowls should probably get in. Dan Reeves was pretty good. So who is our number 1 coach with the most wins that has never won a Super Bowl? And who else? At the number 1 spot, we get to a guy that won more games than anyone without winning that Super Bowl. And his ghost still haunts a current NFL franchise to this day. Hey, his winning percentage was good wherever he went because Marty Schottenheimer had exactly 200 wins in the regular season during 21 seasons of coaching. He coached the Cleveland Browns, the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Diego Chargers, and a team that at the time was known as the Washington Redskins. But Marty Schottenheimer won 61% of the games he coached. 61%? That's incredible. Marty's teams made the playoffs 13 times, but they never even made a Super Bowl. His teams had 3 appearances in the AFC Championship game, 2 with Cleveland and 1 with Kansas City, but he finished with a 5-13 record in the postseason. And in his final season in 2006, Marty led the San Diego Chargers to a 14-2 record, but then the Chargers lost in the playoffs. But I mean, they lost to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in the playoffs. But the Chargers fired him, and the Chargers have been cursed ever since. I mean, just look at him this year. You think all those injuries are an accident? Hey, like I said at the top of the segment, to win in the NFL, you have to have really good players. You have to stay healthy. You need a little luck. And these 5 guys had some great players. They didn't always stay healthy, and they definitely did not always have the luck that they needed. But make no mistake, they were all really, really good. Hey, we will see if any of the 6 guys remaining in the NFL playoffs this year that have not yet won a Super Bowl can go out and get themselves a ring. Hey, next week on The Dose, we will recap that college football national championship game. And of course, we will keep you up to date on those NFL playoffs and all that is going on in the world of sports. So be sure you check out The Dose and be sure you let a friend know to do the same. Hey, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for listening to the Daly Dose every week. Thank you for the emails. Thank you for the texts. Thank you for the tweets. But more than anything, thank you for sharing the show, for sharing the videos, and for sharing the articles with someone that you know. We absolutely love it when you do that. Have to say thank you to Jess P. Could not do any of this without you. I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody.
I don't know who Jay Cutler is.